Ruben Amorim demands signings as Antony gets the here we go to join Real Betis on loan. Manchester United could finally be about to sign a left-back as David Ornstein drops a bomber about Patrick Dorgu. Ruben Amorim admits this Manchester United team are the worst in history. AC Milan are linked with loan moves for Hojlund and Zirkzee as they miss out on Rashford. We've got some Garnacho updates to run through. All this plus more in today's video as we run through all the latest Manchester United news and transfer news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video and let's jump straight into it. So, going to kick off with a little bit of a, let me know in the comments, how do you feel today about the result and the performance yesterday? I don't know what else to say about this team that just hasn't already been said. I'm at the point now where I don't expect us to win these sort of games anymore. I'm surprised when we do. This squad to me is just a £600 million disaster. It's hard to deal with a team that are capable of putting in performances like against City and Liverpool and Arsenal, and then look like 11 strangers on the pitch against other teams. Like, how do you manage a squad and a group of players like that? Erik ten Hag couldn't. Ultimately, he lost his job off of the back of that as well. What are you meant to do with these sort of players that have that mentality where they can turn it on and off like a tap? And I think Andre Onana epitomises Manchester United at the moment. Really good against Southampton, puts in a match-winning performance because he kept us in the game, and then drops a clanger against Brighton. And that's the entire Man United squad is just capable of switching it on and off like a tap. And I don't know how any manager can kind of deal with players like that. And Ruben Amorim must be pulling his hair out around how he fixes that kind of issue because, what are you meant to do? What can you do with players like that? It's ridiculous. And if Ineos think this squad are better than they are and are not going to buy players, then they'll get what they deserve at our expense, in my opinion, because, you gave Amorim a now or never ultimatum to join, knowing full well he plays a specific style of play that will require specialists in that role in key areas, i.e. wing-backs, and then to not back him with any signings, that would be insanity to me for Ineos to kind of do that, and don't expect us to improve anytime soon if that's the case. But thankfully, there are finally some movements in the transfer market which we're going to run through, which are really exciting, which we'll go through in a second. And I just wanted to add that no human being alive today has ever seen Manchester United have a worse home record. Since 1890 was the last time we were this bad at home. So literally nobody alive today has ever witnessed Manchester United be this bad at Old Trafford. The worst team in my lifetime. I've said that before. And it's not just me who thinks that as well, because Ruben Amorim after the game had the following to say: in 10 Premier League games, we've won 2. I know that. If it's like this for a fan of Manchester United, imagine what it's like for me. You are getting a new coach that is losing more than the last coach. I have full knowledge of that. Like I said, I'm not going to change no matter what. I know we can succeed, but we need to survive this moment because I'm not naive. I know that we need to survive now. We are being the worst team maybe in the history of Manchester United, and I know that you want headlines, but I'm saying that because we have to acknowledge that and change it, which was really kind of damning from Ruben Amorim, suggesting that even he thinks that this is the worst team in Manchester United's history. Now, I know we've been relegated in that in the past, and hopefully it doesn't come to that this season, but a lot of the people that I speak to and family members and friends of that kind of generation as well will all say the same, that team's at least had some fight about them and weren't putting in kind of turd performances like this team is capable of. So I kind of, echo what Ruben Amorim said. Some of the other things he mentioned in his press conference, which I just wanted to run through, where he said, where everybody here is underperforming, which again is another damning statement from Ruben Amorim. And then he said also the opponents are better than us in many ways. It's a difficult moment. We're breaking all the bad records. Our performances have been really insufficient. So really kind of, damning home truths by Ruben Amorim regarding the current situation, the current state of play with Manchester United. And I thought Owen Hargreaves kind of summed it up really well, where he says it goes back to recruitment. Ten Hag spent £600 million, and there's not many of those players that would start for another top side. Brighton have 6 in that starting 11 that would start for Manchester United, and that should never happen. And I kind of echo and agree with what Owen Hargreaves said. The recruitment over the last 10 years has been pathetic, but specifically the recruitment under Erik ten Hag. And Erik ten Hag wasn't responsible solely for all of that, because he's not in charge of the budgets and the transfer fees and the monetary kind of values and the contracts and all of that stuff. He did have a veto, though, and Man United have a veto as well. So the whole kind of £600 million to get to the position where we are now, which I've said before, I think this is the worst squad I've ever seen in history. Amorim agrees as well. Let me know in the comments if you do. £600 million on this, which is just absolutely wasted. £85 million on Antony. Got some updates on him going. One of the worst signings I think I've ever seen. Just in terms of everything around it, the salary, the timing of the deal, the transfer fee, the profile of the player, everything around that just stinks of incompetence. £55 million for Onana, who's worse than De Gea. Even Rasmus Hojlund's got potential and stuff, but we overpaid massively for him, £75 million, when we're looking at getting rid of Garnacho, who's, in my mind, proven more in the Premier League than Rasmus Hojlund has in his kind of career so far. And we're looking at getting rid of him for less than what we paid for Rasmus Hojlund, who scored 9 goals in Serie A, paying that sort of money. Casemiro, £70 million, do you know what I mean, for someone that Real Madrid actively wanted to get rid of. Like, all of these deals, you can look back at most of the transfers we made and question mark a lot of them. £55 million on Mason Mount that's never fit and wasn't really the type of player that we needed at that time as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is an absolute £600 million disaster. And that's the state of affairs where we are at the moment. But hopefully, the way around this is we've got to recruit better. We've got to get better recruitment. We need to be ruthless in getting rid of players and bringing in the right players. And thankfully, there's been finally some movement in the transfer window to help Ruben Amorim, because, you can't kind of ask him to play this system if he hasn't got the tools to do his job. So let's go through the transfer news. Antony to Real Betis, here we go. Verbal agreement in place between all parties, with Man United too. Documents being checked, then time for travel and medical tests. United will let him leave on loan with no buy option. He'll be formally back to United in June. So here we go for Antony to go to Real Betis on a straight loan, no option, no obligation to buy. Ruben Amorim, but then the reports coming out are also suggesting that Ruben Amorim wants guarantees that the Manchester United board, that signings will be made if Antony is allowed to leave on loan. Real Betis are waiting for Amorim's decisive green light so Antony can travel to Spain, but obviously that came out from Spanish outlets before Romano gave the here we go, so that would suggest, if that report's to be believed, that Amorim's been given insurances that we are going to bring in replacements if he lets Antony go. Fabrizio Romano also said that Antony is set to join Real Betis, meaning Manchester United will be active in the transfer market in the next days to sign a player in that position. And then Real Betis hope to complete the signing of Antony on loan today. That came from Spanish source who's quite reliable when it comes to Real Betis news. So finally, we've got some movement on outgoings, because obviously we know we're in a position to sell to buy, and I know loaning Antony doesn't really help us. The reports are we're going to be paying around 60% of his salary. We're going to be paying over half. I've not been given like an official figure yet, but it looks like we're going to be paying a majority of his wages as well while he's away. But also, it's important to get the space in the squad in order to be able to bring players in. So I'm going to continue with the outgoings, and then we'll go through the kind of incoming. So another player we're looking to potentially move on, or is heavily linked with an exit, is Alejandro Garnacho. So the latest there came from Corriere dello Sport, and it's worth mentioning their name and remembering that for the future kind of slides I'm going to run through with you. But they were saying that Alejandro Garnacho has spoken to Antonio Conte on the phone. Napoli are close to reaching an agreement with Garnacho. Napoli sporting director Giovanni Manna will meet with Manchester United in the next few hours to negotiate for Alejandro Garnacho. Napoli could be willing to reach 60 million euros, and that's believed to be around the kind of price that United might consider letting Alejandro Garnacho go, around that 50-60 million pound kind of mark. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. And then the other player we're heavily linked with removing is Rashford. when asked again after the game, because obviously not in the matchday squad again, when asked about him, Amram had the following to say: "I'm not going to put a player I don't believe is the best for the team," which again, quite some damning words from Ruben Amorim, who just seemed like he'd had enough. He was like, "I've had enough of being nice and doing everything I can for these players. I'm going to try a different kind of tactic." And it was almost like a Mourinho. It was more articulated than Mourinho would have kind of put it, but it was almost kind of effectively throwing the players under the bus, which I think they need. They really do need a kick up the ass, because it's embarrassing, the performances we're putting in at the moment. But going back to Rashford, so Borussia Dortmund lead the race for Marcus Rashford. If everything goes according to plan, the player could arrive in Dortmund for his medical check as early as Thursday. That came from Bild. And Borussia Dortmund have strengthened their case for Marcus Rashford. It's understood Dortmund have requested information from the Premier League and Manchester United about Marcus Rashford, including in the request was about how he behaves inside the club and also outside of the club. That came from Sam C, who's a good source. Hopefully that will not put Dortmund off too much about going in for him. So just to kind of summarise the exits is Antony, Real Betis on loan. That's pretty much done. Had the here we go. We're just waiting for the formal announcements and stuff like that as well. We are going to be paying around 60% of his salary, which is £200,000 a week. So we're going to be paying a lot of his wages for him to go out on loan. There's no option, no obligation to buy, nothing like that. But it does create space in the squad, which would hopefully enable us to bring players in. Garnacho is still looking possible to Napoli. If they reach the right kind of valuation, then potentially that could be a deal that we see go through. And then with Rashford, Dortmund heavily linked there. Barcelona is still the other team. Barcelona need to sell to buy. And there's talks that they might go for, we're trying to remove Ansu Fati. If they do that, then potentially they could be back in the race for Rashford. I think Rashford is, his preference would be to go to Barcelona. So we'll need to wait and see. That could be one that goes right down to the wire. But, you know, let me know what you think about all of those kind of exit talks. But let's move on to the incoming. So firstly, Manchester United negotiating with Lecce to sign Patrick Dorgu. Now, again, that came from Corriere dello Sport, and the reason I've kind of mentioned that and then mentioned it in the Garnacho comments is because David Ornstein's confirmed that story is true. So there might be some credibility coming out of Corriere dello Sport because they were right about the Patrick Dorgu thing. So David Ornstein dropped a bomber. Man United in talks with Lecce over a potential deal for left-back Patrick Dorgu. No agreement, but dialogue progressing for 20-year-old Denmark international. Man United are lining up various options in multiple positions prior to deciding on ins and outs. So a couple of things to take away. One, definite interest then in Patrick Dorgu. I'll go through the rest of the stories in a second, which is massively exciting because he's a left back. He can play at left back. He's been playing actually at right wing a lot for Lecce so far this season. So he is a player that can fill in a multiple of positions. An absolute, you know, would definitely help raise the physical ceiling that we need. Is lightning fast. You know, would be really, really good at that left wing back position, but could also play potentially in the forward line as well. Although I think he's more got the skill set to play it like fullback, or wing back, but massively exciting. But then also David Ornstein in there are lining up the various options in multiple positions, not so suggesting that maybe we are about to finally see some movement in the transfer window. And, you know, about bloody time is all I'm going to say regarding that. Corriere dello Sport again, though, said that Manchester United have scheduled a meeting with Lecce in Italy regarding Patrick Dorgu. The Italian side value the player at more than £25 million. Romano has come out, again, confirming that this is true, saying that Manchester United are set to open formal talks with Lecce for Patrick Dorgu. The player is 100% keen on joining United. Lecce want around £34 million. Ben Jacobs, hit and miss, but has said that Manchester United are hoping a deal for Patrick Dorgu is possible for 21 to 25 million pounds. So, you know, ultimately, Antony out. It's looking like, well, that's here we go. So that's definitely done. Potentially Patrick Dorgu coming in as, I don't want to say direct replacement, because positionally he'll play as a left wing back. But there could be more movement as well. Obviously, if Garnacho goes, that frees up some funds that we might be able to bring somebody else in. So it is finally starting to kick off a little bit in the transfer market. We've got the kind of exits that we've been waiting for, and Ruben Amorim could finally be about to get a left wing back that we've been crying out for pretty much since he came in, which will be a massive boost for the squad because Mazraoui looks absolutely dead on his feet at the moment, and he cannot continue to play every single game. Dalot is not good in the left wing-back position. I'd argue to say he's not been very good at right-back so far this season, but, it's more of his, you can kind of forgive him a little bit because he is playing out of position, and it massively affects our attacking when we've got 5 defenders, basically. That's what we're having to do at the moment. It's not very good because now you might have the flexibility to play Dorgu, obviously left back or left wing back. If you get another forward in, you could play Amad Diallo at right wing back. And then if you've got another number 10, do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, it can totally change the outlook on the team and the squad. And he is a really promising player, really kind of talented, and he's rapid and is a bit of a beast as well, which will definitely help us going forward. So yeah, we'll keep you updated on any developments. Love to hear your thoughts though on the whole kind of situation in the comments. So let me know what you think down below. And then the final story I've got for you is a bit of a random one. This came from Mark Ogden, ESPN, who is a decent source, saying that AC Milan are considering loan moves for Chelsea's João Felix and Manchester United duo Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Hojlund after accepting defeat in their pursuit of Marcus Rashford. United would need to sign another forward before allowing either Zirkzee or Hojlund to leave on loan, but with Juventus also interested in the pair, the prospect of one of them leaving United this month is realistic, even if Rashford finds a new club. Now, that came from Mark Ogden, who is a decent source, not the most credible, though, I will kind of openly admit, but suggesting that AC Milan might be looking at either Zirkzee or Hojlund on loan, but then also it might be realistic for United. Like, David Ornstein said that Zirkzee wants to stay, but Hojlund, we've not really heard anything about potentially. I mean, would a loan move for him be good? Probably would be, to rebuild his confidence and find himself some form, but that would leave us a massively short up front in an area where, we don't really have any rotation options. It's either Zirkzee or Hojlund that are playing up front, and that's it. The only way that would be possible is if we bring in a striker first. If we brought in a striker, then that might have some legs, and potentially they might be looking to send Hojlund out on loan. But I would say at the moment, it seems a little bit unlikely with the kind of stage we're at in the transfer window. Like, there's only, just over a week left, and that would leave us massively, flapping around trying to bring in a striker. But, it's in the news. It's a decent source. He is Mark Ogden, ESPN. It can be a bit of a shit stirrer sometimes, though. I would say I'll keep an eye on that one for you. Take it with a pinch of salt for now, but let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me know what you think about all the other topics discussed in today's news, because that's you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.